Just now, all four Robotaxi players made billion-dollar moves. Uber launched an entire autonomous solutions business. Wayve raised $1.2 billion, and they started licensing to three major automakers. Waymo expanded to 10 cities. And Tesla, despite rolling out its first Cybercab off the production line already, many are fearing they're not moving fast enough. But is that what's really happening? Everyone is positioning for the same prize. It's a market worth trillions of dollars. But here's what the headlines are missing. Not all of these strategies can scale. And when you understand the economics behind each approach, one clear winner emerges. So I know what you're thinking. We've been hearing about robotaxis for years. What's different now? That's a fair question. But we've seen timelines slip. We've watched crews implode. We've heard promises that didn't materialize. But this week, it's different. Because this week, every major player showed their hand. They revealed their actual strategies, not press releases, but real capital deployment, real partnerships, and real production decisions. So today, we're going to break down each move. We'll look at the numbers behind each strategy, and I'll explain why I think one company has a structural advantage the other simply cannot replicate. Let's get into it. Let's start with Uber. So on February 23rd, they announced Uber's Autonomous Solutions. It's a new division designed to help robotaxi partners with everything from fleet operations to charging infrastructure. Sounds impressive, right? They're positioning themselves as the Switzerland of robotaxis, the neutral platform that helps everyone else succeed. Here's what they announced. Over $100 million for charging station buildouts, partnerships with nearly 24 AV companies, plans to deploy robotaxis in 15 cities by the end of 2026. And they've got deals with Waymo, Wayve, Motional, Volkswagen, Baidu, and others. The charging investment is real. So they're building fast charging autonomous depots starting in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Dallas. They got deals with EVgo, Hubber, and Electra. But here's the problem with Uber's strategy. They're building infrastructure for other people's technology. They're betting that they can be the platform layer on top of robotaxis. But they don't control the most important variable, the autonomy itself. So think about that. Uber is essentially saying, we'll handle the logistics if you handle the hard part. But the hard part, making cars drive themselves safely at scale, that is the entire business. And here's the timeline problem. Most of Uber's partners are years away from true unsupervised autonomy. Wayve just raised $1.2 billion, and they're targeting consumer vehicle deployment in 2027. Volkswagen's Uber partnership, that won't be driverless until 2027. Motional, still figuring things out. So Uber is building charging stations today for robotaxis that won't exist for 3 more years. By the time their partners catch up, the market may already be dominated by someone else. So speaking of Wayve, let's talk about their monster funding round. So this week, they announced $1.2 billion in new funding. Later, that was expanded to $1.5 billion total. So the investors read like a who's who of tech and automotive. You got NVIDIA, Microsoft, Uber, Mercedes-Benz, Nissan, and Stellantis. The valuation is $8.6 billion. That's serious money for a company most people have never heard of. Here's what makes Wayve interesting. They're using end-to-end neural networks. This is very similar to Tesla's approach. So no pre-map routes, no geofence cities, true generalized driving that can adapt to any road. Their business model is also unique. Instead of operating their own fleet, they're licensing their technology to automakers. So they got Mercedes, you got Nissan, Stellantis. These aren't just investors. They're going to be the customers who plan to integrate Wayve's technology into their vehicles. I think this is actually genuinely compelling. If Wayve can crack generalized autonomy, they can then supply the entire automotive industry. But, and this is a big but, look at the timeline. So Wayve plans to launch commercial robotaxi trials in 2026. Trials, not commercial service. Supervised autonomy in consumer vehicles doesn't start until 2027. Full deployment in 10 global markets with Uber, sometime after that. So even with $1.5 billion in fresh capital and partnerships with 3 major automakers, Wayve is still years away from meaningful scale. Their technology approach might be right, and I actually am pretty jealous about it. I wish Tesla had these partnerships. Their business model might be right. better to be licensing a technology. But the automotive industry moves slowly. When the automakers say, we'll integrate this technology, they mean a 3 to 4 year development cycle, platform validation, safety certification, manufacturing integration, supply chain setup. So by the time Mercedes ships a car with Wave technology at scale, what do you think? It'll probably be what, 2028, 2029? That's just a that's not a criticism of Wave. It's just reality of how automakers work. If you remember at the last earnings call, both Elon Musk and the CFO, Vaibhav, they said this, that they've been trying to partner with automakers. But many of these automakers are not even set up to get started. Like they don't even have the most simplest thing, which is over the air software updates. If you can't do over the air software updates, how can you implement any autonomous driving technology in your car? They have to now implement these vision only cameras. I think Wave has said that they are sensor agnostic. It doesn't matter if the vendor wants to add LiDAR, but they've built their technology that it doesn't need LiDAR. And that's why I like Wave. They really did follow Tesla, neural networks all the way. Their problem is they don't have enough cars. So now that they've partnered with these automakers and Nvidia, so it depends on how their partnership with Nvidia, they need to find millions of cars on the road to get that data that they need to truly make their software as effective as Tesla. I think they're years behind, but at least they're following the right technology. And then the question is, how fast can these automotive partners, how fast can they move? And I think we're talking 3 to 4 years at the minimum before they start selling anything at scale. So now let's talk about the company everyone points to when they say Tesla is behind. That's Waymo. So this week, Waymo announced expansion to 4 new cities simultaneously. You got Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Orlando. So now that brings their total to 10 commercial markets. Sounds very impressive, actually. So 10 cities, first to launch in multiple cities at once. Clearly, they're winning. But let's take a closer look. So first of all, it's understandable. The rollout is actually only invite only. Select riders get access first. Broader public access will come later in 2026. So when you hear 10 cities, understand that means limited availability in 10 cities. And again, that's understandable. I think Tesla will do the same thing. When they launch out city by city, it will be by invite only. It will be supervised drivers only. They'll do that for 3 months. But you got to remember, Waymo's been doing this for 12 years. They should have already been able to move this forward. Okay, fine. They're ahead of Tesla and they're moving forward. But just know that when they say, I've got 4 new cities launched simultaneously, sure, but it's invite only. So it's small numbers in each of these cities. So I think the most important thing, though, is the deeper issue with Waymo's strategy, their unit economics at scale. So Waymo uses custom Jaguar I-Pace vehicles. These are loaded with expensive sensors, multiple LiDAR units, cameras everywhere, radar systems. Each vehicle reportedly costs $150,000 to $200,000 to deploy. So at these costs, the math gets very brutal. Even if a Waymo vehicle generates, I don't know, let's call it $10 per hour in gross profit, running 20 hours a day, that's very generous here. That's roughly $73,000 a day in gross profit. So at $150,000 deployment, it's going to that cost, it's going to take over 2 years just to recapture that capital expense before any ROI. And here's what's even more concerning. There are structural limits to how many cars they can deploy per city. So beyond a certain fleet size, the utilization drops. The incremental cars spend more time sitting idle than generating revenue. This explains the strategy. This explains why what they're doing is expand to many cities with limited cars each, rather than saturating a few cities with massive fleets. So if you think about that, the New Street Research pointed out that in a particular city, let's say Austin, they can only have 300 to 500 cars because those 300 to 500 cars are the base number of cars you need for that particular city. Those cars will be busy enough that it might make sense, despite the fact that Waymo still loses money. But as they add more cars, let's say they want to have another 500 cars just in case that there is the peaks during the morning rush hour and the peaks for this evening rush hours, and maybe there's an event or two here and there. In order to service that, they need to add another 300 to 500 cars, but they won't because those cars cost even more money. They lose even more money because they're sitting idle. That's why it's Waymo's strategy to to go and add more cities, not grow. This is something to watch. So while you think that Waymo's winning because they're adding 10 more cities and they're now in 10 cities, they added four more, look closer. So right now, Waymo says that their US fleet is around 3,000 vehicles across all their markets. Now compare that to Uber's 6 million active drivers. The scale difference is enormous. So while you think Waymo's ahead, they have 3,000 vehicles, they're in 10 cities. Actually, it's very tiny. Now, of course, same thing can apply to Tesla. Tesla is very tiny, even worse. They're 1/10 the size of Waymo. So clearly they're behind. That's what the point of the show is, though. Take a closer look at who's going to actually be able to scale to not only match Uber, but surpass them significantly. Unlike software, robotaxis don't scale infinitely with zero marginal cost. Each new car costs $150,000 for Waymo. Each new city requires mapping, permits, infrastructure, operation staff. This is why Waymo keeps raising money. They raised $16 billion earlier this year at a $126 billion valuation. That sounds like victory until you realize they're burning through capital to maintain relatively small fleets across many cities. So now let's talk Tesla. I know what the critics will say, right? Tesla has been promising robotaxis for years, and they're still way behind Waymo. But let's look at the actual data from this month. So Tesla currently has roughly 42 cars in Austin. Availability has been very inconsistent, so it's around 19% of operating hours. 8 vehicles are now running unsupervised, no safety driver, no monitor, just the passengers. Those numbers are very small, and they sound small, and they are. But here's what matters. It's the architecture. Tesla's approach is fundamentally different from everyone else. So they're not building custom robotaxi only vehicles with expensive sensor suites. They're training a neural network that can run on any Tesla with cameras. So that means every Model 3, every Model Y, Model S, and Model X on the road is potentially a robotaxi. Tesla has delivered over 7 million vehicles. Actually, I think it's 8 now, maybe closer to 9. All of them have the camera hardware. All of them can receive software updates. When Tesla's FSD reaches the required safety threshold, they don't need to build and deploy expensive custom vehicles. They just push a software update. Now, I know to caveat all this is hardware 3 and hardware 4 cars. Right now, it's only hardware 4 cars. Tesla's promising that the same technology, the same software that can do robotaxi, that can do unsupervised FSD, will be coming to hardware 3 cars. And that's going to be the difference. Now, let's talk about Cybercab. So this month, as you very well know, Tesla rolled the first Cybercab off the production line at Giga Texas. Continuous production starts in April. Here's what Elon said about Cybercab manufacturing. Quote, manufacturing for the Cybercab is closer to a high volume consumer electronics device than a car manufacturing line. We should be able to achieve a net result of less than a 10-second cycle time. Basically, a unit every 10 seconds. Okay. So when this happens at scale, give it 2 years from now, a unit every 10 seconds. So now let's do the math. That's 360 units per hour, 8,640 per day, over 3 million per year from a single production line. So even if Tesla achieves half that, they'd be producing more Cybercabs per month than Waymo's entire current fleet. Yeah, pretty quickly. And the cost, Musk has said under $30,000 per unit. Compare that to Waymo's 150,000 to 200,000 per vehicle. Even if they're able to cut that by 50 to 100,000, they'd be at 100,000. That's 3 times more than what Tesla's cost is. I just don't understand how Waymo's going to be able to compete. So let's connect the dots here, right? So Uber, what we talked about, they're building the infrastructure for partners. But unfortunately, those partners are probably 3+ years away from scale. We're talking scale, not onesie twosies here. Wayve, They have the right technology approach, but they're dependent on automakers who move very slowly. I think they're doing the right thing, and I think the automakers will choose them. I spoke to a auto expert, a robotaxi autonomous vehicle expert one time, and he said that he does not see any legacy automaker partnering with Tesla, and they won't partner with Waymo because simply both of these are too big. They're too big of enemies to compete to partner with. But a company like Wayve comes along, has technology, says to the automaker, "Hey, look, I'll just sell you you license the tech. You guys run Robotaxi. You run that business. You sell your cars and you upsell them on our technology." What a perfect partnership. So I can see many legacy automakers choose Wayve instead of Tesla or Waymo. But problem is, Wayve needs to wait for these automakers to implement. We'll see how quickly at least some of them maybe be able to do this, but not all. Waymo, on their hand, they've got the proven technology. Okay, it works, but they've got to show the structural economics that they have. It's limiting their fleet size per city, so they need to figure that out. Tesla, you're right, they're slower to launch, but they're building something that the others can't match. It's an entire system. It's designed for massive scale from day one. So here's the convergence that I think really matters. One, Tesla's existing fleet of 7 plus 8 million vehicles, they can all become robotaxis via software update. The Cyber got production in April at a potentially automotive record speeds. Cost per unit, 5 to 7 times lower than Waymo. No expensive LiDAR or custom sensor suites, just cameras and neural networks. AI training on billions of real world miles from the existing Tesla fleet. They already have Cortex, a massive supercomputer, and they're building the next Cortex 2, even bigger supercomputer. The other players, they're trying to solve robotaxis as a premium, limited deployment service. Tesla is solving it as a mass market project. So let's address the obvious objections people might have. Tesla has missed robotaxi timelines before, right? 2020, 2022, 2024. They all came and went without the robotaxi revolution that Elon was promising. And that is absolutely fair criticism. Tesla's timeline predictions have been consistently optimistic. But let's notice what's changed though. This time it's very different. Those were promises about capability. This is data about deployment. 8 vehicles are now driving passengers unsupervised in Austin. The first Cybercab is off the production line. So these aren't promises anymore, they're facts. The question has shifted from can Tesla do it to how fast can Tesla scale? There's also the safety question. Okay, Tesla's robotaxis in Austin have had incidents. The crash rate data shows room for improvement. But look closer and you'll see these crashes were all just parking lot fender benders. So you've heard today and the last few days, you've heard mainstream media shout out from the rooftop, right? You'll say there was 5 crashes in January only. You'll hear headlines that say Tesla's 4 times worse than human drivers. Look closer to what those 5 crashes were, and you will know right away that these were fake headlines that were just trying to say something that was true, but absolutely false. These 5 were all under 4 miles per hour. They were all fender benders. There's nothing here that would alarm anybody. And yet, that's what they said. And when you say 4 times worse than human drivers, do human drivers report, fender benders or little light touches against a stationary object when it's like a mile or 2 miles per hour? They don't. So it's important, though, I think, that Tesla will address this. They have to address this before they do large scale deployment. That's the difference, right? Because for Tesla, any small little thing, a small little bump at 2 miles per hour, and it's going to make headlines. So Tesla can, though, make these improvements through software updates across the entire fleet simultaneously. Every mile driven by every Tesla teaches the system. Waymo's improvements are hardware bound and they're fleet limited. Okay, if you're a Tesla investor, here's the framework. There are 3 scenarios playing out, right? Scenario 1, robotaxi scaling is slow for everyone. Tesla remains just a car company still. The stock trades on vehicle margins. Other players like Waymo, they maintain their lead in limited markets. Everything goes very slow. That is a possibility. Scenario 2, Tesla's approach reaches safety parity in 2 to 3 cities by 2027. The stock re rates as an autonomy play. Cybercab production validates the manufacturing thesis. That could be next year. Scenario three, Tesla's vision based AI achieves escape velocity. Millions of existing Teslas become revenue generating robotaxis. Cybercabs flood the market at scale no competitor can match. Tesla becomes a dominant transportation platform globally. So the question isn't which scenario you believe, it's which scenario the market is currently pricing in. Based on current multiples and analyst models, the market probably somewhere between scenario one and early scenario two, right? For sure, there's already built in to this $400+ price point that the robotaxi is real and it's going to happen. But the $1 trillion robotaxi opportunity, the multi-trillion-dollar transportation as a service opportunity, is not fully priced into Tesla stock. So here's what you can do with this information. One, always advise people track the data, track the Austin fleet metrics. The community is monitoring unsupervised vehicle counts in real time. Watch for that number to grow from, 8 to 20 to 50. That's your signal of progress. Two, watch for the April Cybercab production news. When continuous manufacturing begins, look for production rate data. If Tesla hits anything close to their targets, that's validation of the manufacturing thesis. Three, monitor new city announcements. Tesla has said Dallas, Houston, Phoenix, Miami, Orlando, Tampa, and Las Vegas are coming in first half of 2026. Each new city launch expands the addressable market. Four, compare Waymo's fleet size to Tesla's over the next 12 months. If Cybercab production hits scale, Tesla could surpass Waymo's entire fleet size in a single quarter. Five, follow Uber's partner deployment timelines. If their partners continue to push timelines out, it validates the too late thesis. Look, the Robotaxi wars, at least they're finally here. Everyone made their moves this week. Uber is betting on being the platform. Wayve is betting on licensing. Waymo is betting on geographic expansion. Tesla, they're betting on scale. And in a market defined by network effects and manufacturing economics, scale is what ultimately wins. The company that can deploy millions of robotaxis at under $30,000 each, that's the one that's going to dominate. The company still deploying hundreds of $150,000 vehicles per city, they will be a footnote unless they catch up, unless they figure out a way out of that. As always, this is not financial advice, just my analysis of what I'm seeing. If you want more breakdowns like this on Tesla's, robotaxis, and the future of transportation, please consider subscribing. I cover this space every day. I'll see you in the next one.